Welcome back, artists. I'm Wyatt Paints, and today I'm going back to my roots of my cardboard wizard days. I'm making custom Magic the Gathering life counters. I started playing Magic back when I was 13 years old, back in 19... Well, let's just say you could buy a Mox for $50 and get a Black Lotus for like 90, 120. Yeah, I'm ancient. Well, I've had sort of a love-hate relationship with Magic ever since. I've quit it twice, but it's pulled me back in every time. So way back when I found this STL, I was itching to make this, but I just never got around to it. So today is a good day to do it. And seeing as doing just one top would make a pretty short video, I've decided to make two of them and do something a little special with them as well. More on that later. Even with that, painting is only half the story here. In this case, there's going to be a lot of prep before these are ready for any color. So for those that are interested in that side of the production, this one's for you. For now, they're sitting on my table waiting for attention. I'm going to head to my spray booth. Let's get started. Unlike usual, I haven't actually finished printing these completely yet. The very top and bottoms are actually currently printing on my Elegoo Saturn. So to save a bit of time and to keep this as a 2-day project, I'm going to start prepping the middle section. Now, even with a dialed in and tuned in printer like my Sovol, with an FDM print, you're going to get some layer lines. There's just no escaping it. So these will need judicious sanding to get a good surface to paint on. So I started with a really chunky 60 grit. Now, for those that don't know, sandpaper is graded by a grit. This number refers to the size of the particles embedded in the paper that they're ground to. The lower the number, the thicker and chunkier the bits. This will make the paper more aggressive at removing surface material. Grits 60 through 80 are very abrasive and best when you need to remove significant material to smooth down large surface imperfections. Just remember that this abrasion creates heat, so if you go too fast on a material like PLA, it will literally start to melt. Here, I'm using very light pressure just to evenly scuff the surface. Be sure to check your sanding to ensure that there aren't bands like this that are getting missed. Don't stop until everything's evenly roughed up. When sanding to smooth the surface, it's important to clean your part after each grit. This is not only to remove the loose sanded material, but more importantly, make sure no grit from the paper got stuck to your part. Having that happen and having that grit get picked up in a later step will cause it to gouge scratches into your smooth surface. This is also why you should store your different grit paper separately. I like to keep them in Ziploc bags to avoid this. Now, as you step up through the grits, you don't have to sand it with every single grit step to get an even surface, but I would warn jumping up more than 200 at a time. Once you're in the 200 to 400 grit range, you're using a paper that can still remove a decent amount of material, but just in smaller amounts. It's more used to refine the surface. To relate it to painting, this would be like switching from a large dry brush, like Big Floof, down to a standard size 2 round. It's a bit more detail focused, but your overall speed is going to slow down. This is also a good time to mention the dust, because past this grit, you'll start to produce dust that's fine enough to hang in the air. So you want to make sure that you take precautions to protect yourself, others, and your workspace. That's why I'm doing this in my spray booth. The fan will help pull particles away from me, but I'm still wearing a face mask to be double sure. You only get one set of lungs, best keep them in good shape. Here you can see the side by side. On the right, it's only sanded with 60 grit, and on the left, 220. Again, a thorough cleaning is needed before the next grit. Typically, this would be 400, but I tend to skip this and save a bit of time and jump straight to 600. From the 600 to 800 grit is when you really start smoothing the surface, as the paper is not removing much material at all. It's also the point where you have a new issue to watch for. At this scale of grit, it's very easy for the paper to get clogged with sanded material that bonds to the paper. Because of this, you'll either want to wet sand like I'm doing, or be very mindful and keep moving around to a fresh area of the paper to use. If you don't, you could stop sanding and start burnishing. Burnishing usually happens when you're sanding, but the removed material has no place to go, so it gets pushed back into the surface, usually in the creases. While this looks good at first, these pieces can come loose later, leaving you with a gaping groove in your surface, so it should be avoided. Progress can be noted here with the 600 grit wet sanded on the left and the 400 grit on the right. Next stop on the sanding train is 1000. While the 600 grit gets the surface a bit smoother than a green print, and for most applications would be good enough, I was being really silly and chose overkill today, so I wanted to give the number wheels some extra attention, as they were going to be the most looked at part of this print. But I won't make you sit through a lot more of the same constant rubbing. So here's me sanding at 1000 grit and 2000 grit and 3000 grit. And finally, 5,000 grit. Key takeaway here from this section is that when you get to the 4-digit grits, you're less sanding and more polishing. Is it worth the extra 2 hours, arm strain, and hand cramps? Not personally, but I'll do it this time for you all. In my opinion, you only really need to hit these numbers if you're using clear resin and you need to get it crystal clear. On something like this, a typical person won't see the difference between 1,000 and 5,000 once it's painted, so keep that in mind. With the sanding done, it's a good moment to stop and take a moment to thank my subscribers over on Patreon. In fact, I'm planning on thanking you in a little bit different way today. I'm going to be giving away these tops to 2 randomly selected patrons. Now, this isn't something I'm gonna do on the regular or even semi-regular because shipping is pricey. And don't let this dollar store LEDs or these fancy Target hoodies fool you. I'm a starving artist. There's a reason why I'm so good at doctoring up ramen, but it's an auspicious time and I want to celebrate us inching towards to 1,000 subs. Let's pull. The first winner is gonna be the Macho. Congratulations, the Macho. All right, let's see who is the other winner. Oh, peeking. Oh, okay, got it. This winner is Austin Nats. Congratulations, you two. You're a winner. And I'll get your address and send them out to you soon. With that over with, let's get to painting. With everything sanded and my resin parts cured, I made some hooks out of paper clips. Then I gave everything a quick black gloss prime. As per usual, since I'm going for that final look of true metal, a glossy black prime is going to do a lot of overtime. Not only is it going to give me a nice black base that gives the metallics a deep luster, but the gloss paint has a bit of self-leveling to hide any imperfections I may have missed. With everything dry, it's time to paint up the first one with a steampunk scheme, starting with a bright bronze. With so many parts to this top, I wanted to show off a few different metals, but I thought this would be a great fit for the top and bottom as a bookended piece. The main focus here, of course, is the outer surface, but it's important not to ignore the secondary surfaces, and I wasn't looking to get full coverage as I want to use the black base to bleed through as a shade tone, while also giving the underside a whisper of color should anybody catch a glimpse. Next, I turned to Dwarven Gold for its warm rosy hue. At least that's what I was hoping for. Unfortunately, this was a dud, as it ended up being a basic gold in a rose-tinted medium. No matter how much I mixed it and backflowed my air, the gold metallic would just instantly settle out. So this ended up being a deep and oddly slightly green gold. Weird, but it worked fine enough. My guess is that this is just a brush-only paint then. I used this on the number wheels and the tops and bottom caps. The last color I used was hammered copper. I used this only on the 2 accent rings, and honestly, for my money, they came out so similar to the bright bronze, they might as well be the same color. Maybe if they were right next to each other, the difference would be more noticeable, but with the gold separating them in the final build, it's honestly hard to tell them apart. You'll see what I mean when it's assembled. If I did this again, I might have opted for a darker shade here, but for the purposes of this, I think it turned out fine. For the second top, I started with shining silver for the top and bottom cap. Then I switched to a darker chainmail for the accent ring. Finally, for the fancy top, bottom, and number wheels, I grabbed my all-clad chrome 107. Now, I don't use this stuff often. First and foremost, it's very expensive paint. It's like 22 bucks a bottle. So if I use this on a project for you, it's because I like you. And just as important, this is a lacquer paint, so it brings with it a whole host of headaches, which includes absolutely needing a mask when you spray this and needing a lacquer thinner to clean up after. But outside of that, this is a brilliant paint and it's already thinner than water. It'll spray like a dream, but you'll want to turn down your air pressure or you'll run it out of your cup fast. The biggest tip I can provide using this paint is that I find it best to maintain the lowest amount of paint I can maintain while at full air, and just let it creep its way up to a crumb, all while constantly rotating the part to get even coverage. Once dry, I took everything over to my paint table for the final details of numbering and indicators. For the numbers, I went with Musso Black. Now, this is another fancy paint I don't get to break out often, and as luck would have it, the Macho was the one who donated it to the channel, so it only seems right to use it on something going to him. Seeing as we're recessed painting on a heavily textured surface, I went a little bit heavy loading up the numbers, but thankfully this paint was fine with a bit of a thick coat. As an extra stroke of luck, the polished and glossy surface of the wheel made it easy to wipe away excess overpainting, so the numbers were nice and sharp. I followed this by dabbing in some accent colors for the indicators, vermilion for the warm steampunk top, and magic blue for the black and chrome one. After that, they were done. These came out great. I really hope the Macho and Austin enjoy these with my deepest thanks. Unfortunately, I picked up this file a few years ago, and it seems that the original file has been removed from Thingiverse. There are a few similar remixes that I'll link to. Just know it's going to be slightly different. I'll see about hosting the STL on my Discord server. Hopefully, you'll all give this one a try as well, because personally, I think it'd be pretty baller to rock one of these at your next EDH game. Well, it's time for me to get to the next project, which is gonna be a big one, so keep an eye out for it. For now, please like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. And as always, thank you for watching, stay creative, and always enjoy the process.